Hey there, welcome to LSAT Demon Daily Digest. I'm Ben Olson, that's Nathan Fox. Together we're the founders of LSATdemon.com and our weekly podcast, Thinking LSAT. Here's what we talked about this week.
With me today, I have a former LSAT Demon student, Alex Mavrikos. Alex, thanks for coming on.
Thanks for having me, Nathan.
So we've done a couple of these, and the idea here is to talk to people who have successful LSAT Demon stories to share. I guess the, real broad strokes is, what was your first practice score? And did you do any prep before you came to us? And where did you end up finally on your official?
So I think my first diagnostic was a 154, I believe, which, is solid for what it is.
Yeah.
But nothing to brag about. And so I think I started studying my junior year of undergrad. I was kind of following that like traditional K through JD path where I was going to basically be in law school the summer or the fall following my graduation. I heard about you guys pretty early into my studying career from a coworker, actually, who recommended the podcast. She told me what it was about, what you guys talk about, what you guys cover, and I bought in pretty hard at first. I loved your guys' philosophy on the LSAT, but also just in law school admissions. So I started using you guys, listening to the podcast, signed up for the Demon, did a lot of studying at first, like mainly drilling, kind of going through like whatever videos you guys had on certain topics. And that was primarily what most of my studying consisted of for about, I would say, 6 to 8 months. Dabbled in a couple of other programs. Like I did the trainer, I did Power Score. I preferred your guys' methods and your philosophy more. So that was probably where 90% of all my studying came from. I was getting ready to essentially take the test in that summer, but I wasn't scoring where I wanted to be at that time.
Like, where were you?
High 150s, low 160s. And I bought in early to your guys' philosophy of getting the best score you can, going to the best school you can for the least amount of money that you can. And
Great.
So at that time, my goal was a 170, which is a great score. A 170 today isn't what it was back then, in like 2019, but that was a really good score that would get you a lot of offers at a lot of really good schools. And so that was my goal at that time. And I just had trouble reaching it. Looking back, I still don't have a great explanation as to why I kind of plateaued in the high 150s, low 160s. But essentially, summer rolled around and I wasn't scoring where I wanted to be. COVID hit at that same time. And so at that point, it was a good indicator and an easy decision for me to put off my application for another year. I didn't want to begin my legal journey not knowing if I was even going to be in a classroom studying law school. Decided to put it off another year, continue studying, raised my score. I think at that time I was scoring mid 160s, high 160s coming the following June in 2021. Ended up taking the June test 2021 and I got a 157, which was underperforming for me, big time. Combination of factors, one of which was just terrible headaches all throughout the week prior to that, and just choking on my very first section during the test kind of just derailed my efforts for my very first attempt.
Well, thankfully, law schools only care about your highest score, so you just kind of shake that one off and take it again.
Right. And I was already signed up, I think, for August at that time. And I said to myself, yeah, I had a bad day, but I'm still not scoring consistently where I want to be. It was kind of like a shot in the dark because it was the last flex test. I wanted to, go after it at least once. And so basically I decided, all right, I'm doing this one more time. I'm going to put it off another year. I'm going to continue to study. I'm going to get at least a 170. Still continued to study with you guys. Transitioned a little bit more to doing sections. I did live for a while as well. Went to a lot of your guys' classes. Went to a lot of Matt's classes, Carl's classes, Rebecca's classes. All super helpful. All helped me raise my score for sure. Later on in my studying, as I got closer to this past June, I started doing a lot more practice tests. And I did something pretty unique that I don't recommend to a lot of people, is that I probably did at least 30 to 40 practice tests. At one point, I was doing like 2 to 3 practice tests a week. Some of them timed, some of them untimed, some of them like time and a half. just to really get in that groove of doing practice tests and then also reviewing them and understanding where my mistakes were. That thankfully led me to scoring a 178 this past June. And so now
Wow.
I'm officially done with the test.
Yeah, I'll say that's done with an exclamation point. Wow, congratulations, Alex. That's amazing. So 154 to 178, and it took you a total of a couple of years, huh?
Yep. Yeah. About a little over 2 years, I would say.
Wow. Were you shocked when you saw the 178?
No, I mean, I didn't think I had the best day ever. I knew at that point, given my practice test scores, that I was going to get a 170. Like I was just too consistent to not at that point. I didn't think it was my best day ever though, so I was expecting maybe something in the low 170s. But I guess that's kind of the mentality people have leaving the test, is they usually think they did worse than they actually did. And
That's
so
true.
definitely affected me.
Yeah. Wow. Okay. So 154 to 178 over the course of a couple of years. Man, you did a combination of different levels of Demon subscription, is that right?
Yeah, I did. I did basically everything you guys had at least some point throughout the journey. Like I dabbled in everything. It's hard to say what helped me the most, because I would tell you it was doing all those practice tests, but at the same time, I may have just been that good at that point, and it was just kind of the natural progression of it. But I felt like that's where I saw the most improvement. But I do want to add a caveat that I would never recommend somebody do that many practice tests. I think for me, scoring as highly as I wasn't exerting as much mental energy as somebody that's in the 150s would if they were doing that many practice tests.
Right. If you're tired after you take a test, or if you have endurance problems during the test, it's simply because you're not good at the test. There's nothing. Once you get good at it, then it's not taxing. And so sitting there for 2 hours to do a full test is like really no big deal when you're good at it. But when you're not good at it, then geez, 2 hours of LSAT. Oh my God. It's like, killer.
Right. The test difficulty is the same for everyone. It's like lifting a 20-pound dumbbell. The difficulty is the same, but if you're a beginner in the gym versus a bodybuilder, that 20-pound dumbbell is going to feel a lot heavier for one.
Yeah. Yeah. I like that. That's a really good analogy.
Mm-hmm.
Any tips for success? Maybe tips for people who are in the you said 154 was like a pretty cold diagnostic for you?
Yeah, that was about as cold as it could get.
Okay.
Other than like understanding what the 3 sections were, that was about it.
Okay. Yeah, that's still a pretty cold diagnostic. That's by the way a really good diagnostic score. When Ben and I see a 150 something on a very first test, we go, "Oh, this is going to be no problem. Like you got this." Now, Alex, took 2 years to grind it out, but look where Alex ended up. So yeah, we think that 150 anything shows lots of promise, and we would expect that you're going to make it at least into the 160s, frequently higher than that. So any tips for people starting off where you did?
My biggest tip that I think applies to everyone is just to not settle. Obviously, don't settle on the LSAT. I don't know about you, but I personally have never met anyone that I didn't think couldn't at least get into the 160s. And I think way more people than we realize can get into the 170s. So obviously do not settle on the LSAT, but don't settle on this process either. If you're still an undergrad, get the best grades you possibly can. Get the best letters of recommendation you can, write the best personal statement you can, write the best optional essays that you can. I'm a firm believer that if you settle now in this process, well, then you're going to settle in law school. And if you settle in law school, you're going to settle as an attorney. So my best piece of advice is and this is one of the things that I bought into, is to be the attorney today that you want to be in the future. Behave like them, act like them. That is the best way to approach this, because this is the beginning of your legal journey. It's not just you're not just checking a box in this process. This is the foundation for your legal career.
Well put. Specifically with settling on the LSAT, we hear people all the time who they start at 154 and they're like, well, yeah, so my goal is 160. I just got to get a score in the 160s. And it's like, are you kidding? Why? I would be mad if you set a goal of 170, because why not 175?
Yeah, I see all types of things like that in my personal life, but also on places like Reddit. And it just saddens me. You can't help everybody. You can't change everyone's mentality. But I really bought into your guys' philosophy. And one of the things you used to do, especially like in reading comprehension, is you'd say that when you get a passage, act like you're an attorney at a law firm and somebody just handed you this piece of paper and put it on your desk. And, like it was those things that got me really fired up. Like whenever you said those things, I would stand up a little bit straighter. I would, read much more carefully, much more strictly, much more critically. It was those types of things that I think really kept me going and understanding that what I do now will affect what I do in the future and the opportunities that I have as an attorney.
Amazing. Where are you applying this fall? Is that the idea?
I am, yeah. I'm applying to about 15, 16 schools, good amount of them in the T14, one in my home state, a couple outside the T14. But yeah, I'm applying broadly and I'm hopefully apply early.
Cool. That sounds great. I can't wait to hear what your offers are once they came in. An idea what kind of law you might want to practice?
I think I'd like to dabble in a lot of different areas. I know I want to go into litigation. I'll probably try to work for a firm my first couple of years outside of law school, just to sort of maximize my exit opportunities after that. I would love to go and work for the government at some point. I'd love to go in-house at some point, but I know for sure, without a doubt, that I'd like to do litigation.
Wow. How did you arrive at that?
I think the work to me just sounds a little bit more interesting and more conducive to kind of who I am as a person. I like the team-oriented work. I like the fact that you're essentially investigating something, unraveling it, and really trying to be diligent in your work and figuring out what the issue is and how to best help your client. At the end of the day, I want to be the best advocate for my client or whatever area of law I end up going in. That's essentially my ultimate goal.
Yeah, you seem like a good fit for it. I was talking to a litigator the other day who described his life as the life of a professional student.
I love that. Yeah.
And he's just going to attack these issues that he doesn't know anything about, but he knows that he can learn about those issues. And that's his job, to be the best advocate he can for his client. He needs to learn the maximum about that issue. And he really sees it as a professional student. So, starting that way with your LSAT studies, or even before that, starting that way with your actual undergrad career, to be a professional student in your undergrad is a really good first step in a lifetime of that.
Yeah, I want to be the guy that figures it out.
Yeah. The other thing that I think it seems like a good fit litigation for you is that the way you talk about, not wanting to settle and wanting to just sort of like leave it all out there, like you're gonna do all of it. Because I do know that about litigation too, that it's like when it's on, it's all the way on. I mean, it's just a all consuming. That's all you're doing with your life is this matter. And then, you might have months off in between matters, but when it's on, you're going to be like all the way fully on.
Yeah. That's what gets me excited.
And that appeals
those
to
moments.
you.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Cool. Amazing. Any final thoughts?
No, I mean, that's about it. I'm assuming most people that are listening to this probably listen to the podcast, but I highly recommend it. I think the work that you guys do is amazing, not only with this test, but preparing people for law school and the process. You guys have probably about as much of an effect on future attorneys as professors and as employers do, I think. Believe it or not.
Very nice.
Yeah, no, I think it's true.
Very nice of you, Alex.
Hey there, welcome to the LSAT Demon Daily. I'm Matt Dumont, an LSAT teacher and tutor at the LSAT Demon and 3L at the University of Maryland. With me is Becca, who also teaches and tutors at the Demon and is also a 3L at the University of Maryland. How's it going, Becca? Yeah, I know, 3L, right?
I know. And last time we worked on we worked on how do we show 3L on our fingers. And then we talked about how that's not a great podcast question. So we're bringing it back up again. Things are going great.
But this is also for YouTube, so maybe some people will laugh at our silliness.
Hey, everybody on YouTube. Is this what passes for a joke for you? You're going to love law school. This is as good as it gets.
How are you? How are you, Becca? How was your summer?
Absolutely fabulous. We're recording this during my son's nap time, which is like a golden moment. I had a wonderful summer internship this year with Baltimore City Public Schools, and it was genuinely the best part of law school so far. I did so much stuff. I learned so many things. I wrote so many things. I found out what an escheat is, ESCHEAT.
I don't know what
if
that
you
is.
die without a will in Maryland, your money goes to the school district of the county where you resided at death.
If there isn't someone to inherit it, right? Like the
Exactly.
typical sort of like common law inheritance. If you have a surviving spouse or surviving child, I imagine that it would probably go to them. But if you don't have those things and you don't have a will, it goes to the school district. Wow, that's nice.
I know. And that's a good segue into our topic for today, which is planning your will while LSAT prepping. Just kidding. Matt, tell me about your summer, because I know you had a good summer too.
My summer was great. I finished, this is Monday, the 15th of August. I finished mine on Friday, my internship, and I was a judicial intern on the Court of Appeals of Maryland, which is Maryland's version of the Supreme Court, the highest court. And I interned for Judge Baran there, and it was incredible. I essentially was clerking for the summer, helping write opinions, writing bench memos, doing all the stuff. Certainly not to the level that a clerk would and will do, which I will discover because I got a clerkship during this summer, also on the Court of Appeals. It's going to be for after I graduate. I'm super excited. I'm going to be back on the same court. So it'll be fun.
That's going to be awesome. I'm stoked.
I'm stoked. It's going to be great. So let's turn to the matter at hand. We have an email from Grace, and Grace is very timely. You know, it's right about the admission cycle. Got a couple of weeks before some of these admissions things open. And, you know, because like September 1st, September 3rd, September 10th, like all these, a lot of places are going to start opening then. And then some of the later schools that open admissions will be around October 1st. But the vast majority are during September. So this is a great email from Grace. Without further ado, she says, "Hi, I have a question that might be good for the podcast. We agree. Preparing for applications, I'm wondering how extensive the applications themselves will be beyond the pieces we can do beforehand, such as LSAT score, LSAC, GPA, or your UGPA, as Ben and Nathan have taken to calling it, the letters of rec, personal statement." She says, "I'm sure it depends on the school. I believe Ruth has said on the show before that Yale had an additional required essays. But will every school have additional essays / questions to answer? Or will it be as simple as paying the application fee, giving them my info, and hitting submit? Just trying to be as prepared as possible to apply September 1st. Thanks in advance. You guys are the best. Grace." So, Miss Becca, talk let's start off with what the applications are more in general outside of the LSAT, LSAC, GPA, letters of rec, personal statement. What do you remember about the rest of it?
I know. This is so funny because I'm sure you're having the same moment where you're like, wow, that was a while ago when I applied.
It was a while ago now. Yeah.
Are we old?
Yeah.
I think so. Oops. Point being though, the applications are school specific. So I totally believe, for instance, if Ruth says that Yale had a few extra things going on, in general, they don't have much extra in my memory. And I think I applied to about 12 different schools all over the country. So you definitely might have, surprise, read the directions. This is the best advice. Yep. The only thing you need to do is read the directions and follow them. There will not be like, in order to apply to each school, there's like 5 hours of extra work required. No. That is nothing like that. But there could totally be, like, for instance, I remember, I'm pretty sure it was Texas. I don't know if they have this now, but when I applied there, they specifically required a why Texas paragraph in your personal statement. So I had to go back and add one to my personal statement. That was not a huge thing. There are very few additional essays. I think Vandy had an additional essay, and I don't remember what it was about. You kind of just do it. You know, it would not be something to worry about, and it would not be something to be like, I have to get these ready ahead of time before the applications open. It's not going to be the kind of thing that's going to make you late. That's for sure.
So what you're saying, I think in short, is that the application process is also a test of reading comprehension. Where
did you get that idea? Yeah.
Yeah, it is. It's about checking boxes. So the vast majority of schools that I experienced, and I think that this differs at the top, like if you're looking at schools, you know, especially above like the 25 mark and above, I would expect that there might be some additional optional things that might not actually be so optional. But the vast majority of these applications is just like checking a box, filling in a standard boilerplate form. And what's nice is that once you fill it in on like one or two of them, the vast majority of that information actually does transfer over to the other form applications, where it's like you don't have to type Matt Dumont over and over and over again. It just starts to populate. Now, some of the schools will have that question worded slightly differently. That comes up for things like ethnicity and like race considerations, gender considerations. There will be different ways that they phrase that. And so just be careful and read. But a lot of it's box checking. Now, they do have optional essays and some mandatory essays. There's definitely some infamous ones out there. The Yale 250 is one that you must do. Like, it's a thing. It's part of their application. There's also some that will specifically say things like, please explain any significant increase in your LSAT score. And what is our response to that?
Literally, the last class I taught on Friday, I wrote this in the chat box and told everybody to copy and paste it. This is what you will write. I knew I could do better, so I took the test again. Like, This, do not make it more complicated than that. Don't spend any time wondering what is a significant increase. So I went up by 7 points between the two times I took the LSAT. I didn't write an addendum anywhere. Nobody asked. I think the personality of most law students is to overthink, which may or may not serve you well in your legal career, maybe sometimes, but that is not where to devote literally any iota of attention more than I knew I could do better, so I took the LSAT again, period.
Yep. Send. Yeah, and I agree. There was, I think USC has that on theirs, which I applied to, if I remember correctly. And so I typed literally that. And then I was asked it when I was on campus. I went to a tour at UCLA, and the dean of admissions there, Dean Schwartz, asked me, he was like, well, I see your LSAT's gone up a bunch. I went from a 163 to a 171 official. So around the same 8 points up. And I said, point blank to his face, I said, I knew I could do better, so I kept studying and I took it again. And he went, okay, well, let's move on. Like, what do you say to that? So answer that. But I do want to sort of pivot for a second, maybe unexpectedly for you, Becca, since we didn't talk about it, but it came up, it popped back into my head. I think there are a lot of optional essays in the point of like why X. Like, hey, why this school? Some of those schools, that's not really optional. I know from my own experience, UVA, for instance, if you don't write a YX, they probably will put your application, unless you're like a 184.3 something. If you don't do that, they're going to put your... Yes, absolutely, like me. No, they're going to put... That's a total lie. They're going to put your application in a pile of like, let's check back on this. So make sure that you find out whether they're actually optional. But I think there's also a lot of optional essays with scholarship stuff. Did you do any like scholarship applications that included optional essays, Becca?
Yeah, that's a great question because you will not believe this, Matt. You and I have the same scholarship at the University of Maryland, more or less. That one did require a very brief essay. And again, it was, I don't even remember what the topic was. It was, why do you want to go to law school or whatever, something like that. I basically took like the concepts of my personal statement and just, and it was fine. Don't make it more complicated than that. There were other scholarships because I was like, anything that you tell me, are you interested in a scholarship? They're just seeing if you'll bother, right?
Right.
So and there are going to be topics about, what do you want to do with your legal career? That was an easy one for me because I wanted to go into school law. I still want to go into school law. And I was able to just simply say, here's my experiences as a teacher and a school administrator. And now I want to study law so that I can do this from the other side. I'll be able to do this. Boom.
Right.
Like it's very cut and dry. I was very careful, thanks to the good advice from Ben and Nathan on the podcast. I was very careful not to be like, I'm going to change the world and I'm the best and I'm so great. Just don't make conclusions about yourself.
Be an
adult. This is what I've done. Yeah, this is what I've wanted to do. This is where a law degree will enable me to do this job. That makes the admissions officer reading your essay think, oh, this is a very adult person and somebody that if I let them into my school, they're going to really want to come and they're probably going to come and be more likely to get good grades, stay, graduate, make my school look good. So that's all you're trying to do.
Yeah, it's jumping through some hoops on purpose in order to get more money on purpose. And they want to see, I treat those kind of things as red flag generators in the idea that, hey, is this going to help me more than it hurts? And by hurts, I mean, I don't want it to hurt at all. And so like, you have to take these essays, whether they happen or not for you. Well, if you don't do them, it doesn't matter. So I don't know why happen or not. I said that, but yay, live podcasting. But if you choose to go down that route, or if it's required for whatever reason, make sure that you proofread your stuff. Like take the time to do that. It will take you some time to write these kind of optional essays or mandatory essays. Even if they're one sentence, I hope that you take the time to carefully think about how to say what you're trying to answer. And to that end, think about the ones that are out there that are optional, that are, the typical sort of essays, diversity statement, your GPA addendum, like those kind of things that are truly optional, and think about whether it is actually going to help you without hindering you. Did you write a diversity statement, Becca?
So I did not. I was tempted at first because if you are an American millennial, you have been told you are unique. And as much as that is snowflake. True, we are so special and that's wonderful. Love you so much. But at the end of the day, there was nothing in my story because I was like, well, I'm the only person with a teaching degree applying to law school. That is that is not true. Like, unless you have something that truly makes you fill a gap that the law school is looking for more diversity. And I will tell you right now, nice, well-meaning white women of America, you are not providing a new diverse perspective to your law schools. And you're probably providing the backbone of many wonderful parts of the law school. And that's great. But you don't come in and think, nobody needs to hear your voice in a diversity statement. So I did not write one. Thank you, Ben and Nathan. I don't regret that. I can definitely say. Matt, did you write one?
I did, even though I am
Why did you do that?
A white dude, because I'm old, but I'm not old enough to have written one. And I think it was a mistake, to be perfectly honest. I think it was a mistake. And I got waitlisted at some schools that I probably should have gotten into. And so reading the tea leaves is impossible. Maybe I wasn't what they were looking for a number of reasons. But a part of me always wonders of like, oh my gosh, did they look at this and go, this guy's like a 36-year-old white dude. Why is he has no business writing a diversity statement. And then they look at it and check for the red flags. Did I make grammar errors? Did I make spelling? Like, who knows? I mean, I do because I wrote it and I have it still on my computer. But, that's what I'm saying is like, did they look at that and go, what is this guy trying to pull? So be really careful. I wrote mine because I was an older applicant than the average. But I wasn't old enough to write that. I also wrote it from a perspective of, I'm a theater person. I'm fun and exciting. I traveled the country. I have all these unique perspectives because of travel. that just sounds even more privileged, to be honest. And so I think I ended up where I should have ended up. I'm very thankful to be in Maryland. I love that I'm at Maryland. But part of me always wonders, did I set off a bunch of red flags with that unnecessary diversity statement? And I think that should be a good lesson for people. Really think about whether you want to write this statement and whether it's going to help you without hindering. There are a number of ways to articulate diversity that are already on the form. You're going to be checking boxes literally for gender identity and age and ethnicity and
veteran status,
all of those kind of things.
Lots of things. Mm-hmm.
Do you have additional stuff to add to that story beyond telling them? If that's all your diversity statement is, I really want to encourage you to think long and hard about whether to send it along in the first place.
And I think that also gets at one of the things that's different about law school admissions and like the law school personality versus perhaps other like job applications you've done or undergrad admissions. Law school admissions is a lot less like touchy-feely, and it's a lot less, you totally scored points with your undergrad admissions office when you wrote the cutesy-pootsy. They probably really, really liked it. But it's better for you to be understated, and kind of let things speak for themselves. This is where we are constantly harping. If you can possibly bring your GPA up, you're still in undergrad, shut down everything and do that first.
Yep.
If you can possibly, exactly, because nobody can debate, oh, look at that. They have a great GPA and a great LSAT score. And oh my gosh, they checked this box, or whatever. Somebody who really, really has some special thing, they don't really like talk about it. They don't make a big deal out of it. What's some football player, oh my gosh, now maybe I shouldn't even bring up this anecdote. Some football player was once asked in an interview why he never did touchdown dances. And he said, oh, I don't want people to think I've never been in the end zone before. And let's just say it was Bo Jackson. Maybe this is going to be the most commented on YouTube video on our whole, is everybody going to be like, no, it wasn't him.
I'm not a sports ball person for the most things, so I cannot help you.
Clearly me either. But the concept there is very true on law school admissions. Don't make a big deal out of things that aren't going to end up looking like a big deal. And you won't make it sound like, oh, ooh, that's a red flag generator, like you're saying.
Yeah. Red flag generator. And just always to circle back to it, speak on the facts. Tell them the facts about you. Tell them the facts about your life, if that's something that you're going to get into. For instance, from a diversity statement, if you were homeless as a child, that's a fact. Leave the conclusions at the door. Let them make the conclusions. Mm-hmm. So stick to the facts that talk about your story, those kind of things. Stick to the facts about your GPA. Don't make excuses. Say, hey, I got a 4.0 the last 2 semesters I was at school. That's a fact. They can't argue with it. And it shows your sort of upward trend. Any last things, Becca?
I would just say all of these questions, it's really fun to talk about them on the Demon Daily. They have been answered, each one of them, probably 20 times on the Thinking LSAT podcast throughout the years. It's really good for us to like repeat. I'm glad that we answered these questions today. But you would really be missing out if you didn't go back into the archives, just the search feature, obviously on thinkinglsat.com. Because I know the answers to all these questions from listening to the podcast and being able to apply it. So I would say one thought is it's a balance, right? And you want to ensure that you are putting forward a personality to the law school, to the admissions office that says, I really want to go to this school. I will absolutely come to this school if you give me a full ride, and I will totally, I want to come here, So like when you have a chance to write if they have an optional why school statement and you have a really good reason, for instance, when I applied to Wash U in St. Louis, I have a ton of connections to St. Louis. I have family there. I grew up, a few hours away. There were all of these very legitimate reasons that I could say this school really, and guess what? Surprise. They gave me a great scholarship. And the reason we didn't go is because my husband didn't get a job there. And now here we are in Maryland. But Those, and for instance, by the way, what did I tell Maryland when I applied? And they're like, okay, you have a 176 and a 3.67. Are you just like trying to, what's going on here? And I was like, my husband just got a job 10 miles from the law school. I love Baltimore.
Yep.
Which I do. You know, those things are the facts, right? Look, I can tell you, when I tell you my husband just got a job like 10 miles from the law school, you go, oh, that's why you want to go here. Look, that makes sense. If I just say, I've always heard of the great reputation of Maryland Carey Law. No, you haven't. You don't know anything about this place.
Yep.
So balancing, no BS, but is there a good reason to answer some of those questions? Then you definitely should.
Yeah. Pretend that your reader is the most skeptical lawyer you know. I think that's a good place to end it. Yeah.
I love that.
We have an email here from Nicholas.
It says, it looks like LSAC will allow test takers to purchase score preview for any administration, not just their first attempt. Does this change ... anything? My initial thought is no, since schools only care about your highest score, as I've learned via the LSAT Demon Daily podcast. So a cancel would likely be considered the same as a lower score? ? But perhaps I'm misunderstanding how admission officers' incentives might change. Curious to hear your guys' thoughts. We just talked about this on the Thinking LSAT podcast, but I guess I didn't really think about the incentives from the admissions officer's perspective. I mean, I think what they're going to see is just more cancellations, would be my guess.
They're going to see more cancellations, but at the end of the day, the question remains, one, how's this score going to affect our ranking? And two, are you going to be able to compete in our law school? Are you going to be able to succeed? And those things are considered or determined by your highest LSAT score. So their incentives don't seem to change in my mind.
Especially how it affects their rankings. I mean, they are explicitly ranked only on the highest score for each member of the incoming class. That's what they have to report to the American Bar Association, and that's where US News gets its data. And so when it weights the LSAT profile of the class, it's doing that based on the highest LSAT from each member of the incoming class. And so cancels and bad scores are the same.
Yep.
How does it change if they start seeing a bunch of cancels? Not at all. I don't know. If they're sensible at all, the only thing they care about is the high score on record.
Yep. So save yourself the $45 or the $75 if you get tempted into considering this after you've taken the test, and just don't buy it.
I can see people wasting their attempts more like cavalierly now because of score preview. You know, they're like
they feel more confident.
I'm not really ready, but I got score preview, so I'll just take it. And then, if I don't get the score I want, then I'll just cancel. And it's like, okay, but your practice test scores aren't anywhere near a good score. You're not going to just get lucky. So all you're really doing is flushing a bunch of money down the toilet so that you can put a cancel on your record so that you can waste one of your 3 attempts per cycle or one of your 5 attempts across multiple cycles. And it's just like, okay, well, that was one chance you had at your best score, but you totally squandered it. And by the way, you paid extra for it so that you could get score preview so that you could then cancel your score. I mean, it's just not, the only thing it's going to do is lead to more cancellations.
And more retakes. Wow. LSAC's really got this benefit.
I don't know. To me, it doesn't seem like a good investment. I have yet to hear a good argument for it. So I don't think this changes anything. It's just more opportunities for you to pay $45 or $75 extra dollars for your LSAT. I would recommend declining that option. We have an email here from Kayla.
Hey there. I was listening to your Monday podcast and had to share a click of mine. I had done a different course before the Demon, and they were really big on doing diagrams for everything. They said that for an unless statement, the part of the statement that was introduced by unless was the necessary condition, and the negation of the other part was the sufficient.
Ben, it's so simple. The part of the statement that was introduced by unless is the necessary condition, and the negation of the other part is the sufficient. I just don't understand why people don't you get it?
The funny thing about that is it's technically incorrect, but the result is correct given what they're having you do. But yeah, boy, that is confusing. Then I do an LR question with the demon, and there's an answer choice with unless. And the answer preview mentions that unless just means if not. And I was like, holy shit, that is so much easier. It's just the contrapositive of what the other course was trying to teach, but a way easier way to do it in my head, or to see it in my head. I had spent so much time memorizing what the other course was teaching when all along it was just supposed to be, if not. This was such a good click for me. And now I feel like I don't have to overthink this one word anymore. Thank you so much for all you guys do, Kayla. All right.
Thanks, Kayla. I learned that from a student. It was a student of mine in one of my classes back in San Francisco who was like, because I remember doing like this whole convoluted introduction to unless, and then some student was like, wait, doesn't unless just mean if not?
Mm-hmm.
And I actually remember telling them that they were wrong and then thinking about it overnight and then coming back to the next class and going, I have to apologize to you because unless equals if not is a much better way of thinking about this. Thank you very much.
Or not even thinking about that at all. You can just read the unless sentence and understand it. You can't go to law school unless you take the LSAT. Do you want to translate that using if not or just understand it?
Yeah, you can't go to law school unless you take the LSAT. Okay, so yeah, if I don't take the LSAT, I can't go to law school.
I get it, right? Did you even need to re-say that?
No, you don't need to turn the unless into an if not there in order to understand.
I'm not saying I've taught people this and I use it on occasion, but only in places where I can't intuitively grasp the way the sentence is phrased with unless. But for 80% of unless sentences, you can if you just sit there and read it and try to understand it.
Yep.
And that's what people aren't doing is they're immediately shutting off their intuitive side of their brain. And they're saying, oh, I got to defer to the analytical side. And that's because of all this jargon out there. And it's like, no, you only have to do that every now and then. And when you do it the easiest way, which is just to think of it as if not.
Well, that's what happens when you study theory first. If you study theory first, you do this whole lengthy thing about unless, and then you go into the LSAT going, oh my God, you get LSAT brain. And LSAT brain makes you take a normal, just very common sense thing, like you can't go to law school unless you take the LSAT, and you turn it into, okay, let me see. So the part of the statement that was introduced by the unless was the necessary condition, and the negation of the other part is the sufficient. So, and then, you spend you burn 750 mental calories trying to figure out this thing that commonsensically you would have just got naturally before whatever dumb LSAT lesson you took.
I need to take the LSAT. Got it. Makes sense.
Yeah. We do have a mission here of trying to eliminate dogma from LSAT shit. And it's hard because I was trained by another LSAT company, it took me years to get rid of some of those lessons that I read at the very beginning of my LSAT studying. It wasn't helping. It was hurting. 10 years later, I'm like, wait, why the hell am I saying that?
Yeah.
We have an email here from Madison.
Madison says, good evening. My name is Madison, and I have just started to study for the LSAT. I have been with y'all for a couple weeks now and just been familiarizing myself with the exam. The only advice I have received from lawyers in my social group was to absolutely take an in-person LSAT course before taking the exam. Okay, they know nothing about education. That's okay. I am obviously not opposed to taking the course, but I really enjoy the LSAT demon lessons and I see myself improving through it. Essentially, what my question is, should I consider the LSAT demon as just a study tool or can it be my only source of practice? Or do y'all recommend taking an outside in-person course with the website? If I went hard and utilized the entirety of the website, can it get me a desirable score? So we think you absolutely can use and should use only the demon to prepare for the LSAT.
We don't think that. We know that.
Yeah.
I mean, we know that based on just scoreboard. Like we have helped hundreds of students crush the LSAT with no other prep besides just the demon. And that's absolutely true at the basic level and the premium level and the live level. I mean, you can crush the demon at every level of subscription. It just depends on how much of us you want. But we would vastly prefer that you don't do anything else. The other shit's going to hurt you.
Yeah.
We can rescue you from the bad shit you've already done. But if you're considering doing other shit and us, don't.
Yeah.
Just do us.
Yeah. You know, I want to unpack this a little bit, because there are very legitimate reasons why in-person learning is way better than online learning, but that's not our context. So what you have to be aware of is elementary education, maybe even colleges, these schools that are trying to do more than just teach a very targeted skill set. There are benefits to meeting people in person. So that's why some people out there believe, oh, look, if you want to learn something, you've got to do it in person. That is true in certain circumstances. That's not true for specialized skills. And the LSAT is a very specialized skill, and in fact does better online. I mean, we've just seen it.
Well,
It's
we knew it
astronomically
immediately in 2020. Like, we were forced online by the pandemic.
Yeah, we were doing in person for over a decade, each of us.
Right. And we're never going back. Like,
no,
I would only go back if I thought it was good for the students. But I want to be clear about this. If I went back to live in person, I think it would be bad for the students.
It would be bad. They'd be forced to sit there for 3 to 4 hours, or a weekend class, 8 hours, and absorb exactly half of that.
They'd be forced to commute to class, to climb over each other to get seats. They bring, smell each other's stinky food. They'd be forced to have bathroom breaks and lunch breaks and commutes home, and just such a ridiculous waste of time and energy to do in-person LSAT. I mean, college maybe is a different thing, right? You're going to go to college because you're going to have a college experience.
Social networking. There's so much more going on there.
You don't need an LSAT experience. I mean, we'll give you and by the way, we do have fun in our live classes online. I mean, I think sometimes people are like, well, I hate online learning. Yeah, you might hate the way other people do it, but I don't think you're going to hate the way we do it.
Yeah.
And anyway, scores shot up since we were forced to go fully online, and we're not going to go back. Yeah, a lot. A lot. I remember telling people like, well, I expect that if you do the work, I think you're going to improve by 10 points. I won't understand why you don't improve by 10 points.
The exact same thing, but it was 10 to 12. I kept telling people 10 to 12. That's a good, reasonable shot. Yeah, some people get 20. Yep, that happens. I've seen even more than that. That's really crazy rare. Don't think about it.
now it's like 20 is common. Yeah. And 25, 30 is not even that rare anymore. It's wild.
Yeah.
It's just better online.
Also, I should say one more thing. Sorry, I know we could keep going on this forever, but I started the Demon. Nathan joined forces because of the problems created by in-person classes. Right?
Say more.
You're giving homework to a group of people and saying, learn from this. The Demon is saying, no. We are going to find the exact question you need to move your skills forward. And so you're always doing a question that's right above your skill level. That is the ideal place to practice, because it's going to constantly pull you up, not too hard and not boring and too easy. But that's how class was, right? Class in person.
And there's still merit to classes, but we only have classes as a supplement to drilling. Yeah, everybody should be using the drilling.
They're targeted in a way that,
yeah, right. I didn't think about that.
In a way that they weren't before, right? Before it was they were all general.
Right. I never had fundamentals classes or intermediate classes or advanced or expert classes. And I never had classes that were just on logical reasoning or just on reading comp or just on LR. Now we have all of those things.
We tried. I don't know if you tried. I tried to create these like different tiers of classes, but with the in-person model, it was difficult and really kind of gimmicky. Fake.
Yeah. Wow.
Anyways, Madison, this is better. It's not just, I'm going to compromise and go with online. it's actually worse, I think, to go in person.
And you know, these lawyers who are telling you that you absolutely have to take an in-person LSAT class, I've met a million lawyers, and almost every lawyer that I ever talked to is like, oh yeah, I hated the LSAT. I did terrible on that, you know, or I wish I would have taken a course, but I didn't. And also, lawyers do tend to be older, and older people don't understand the value of doing anything online. So, you know, these people who are telling you, oh no, you have to take an in-person LSAT class, man, if you settle, could you imagine like the difference between settling for Kaplan or Princeton Review, which by the way is way more expensive, or instead just do the Demon?
Yeah, it's weird. It's because you're really comparing these just two astronomically different things, right? If we're saying that the Demon online is better than in person with us, but that's not your choice. Your choice is the Demon online or something in person like Kaplan, or what else? Like
Kaplan that has like, they'll hire people with like 165s and have them teach LSAT.
165s that they took in-house, not actually officially administered.
They did with me. Yeah. Oh, here, go sit in this back room and just take this practice test. Oh, yeah.
That I just took out of this filing cabinet and gave to you.
Ridiculous.
Oh, you've never seen it before, right? No. Yeah. Okay, good.
Anyways. All right. Thank you, Madison. Email daily at lsatdemon.com if you'd like to ask us a question or share some LSAT or law school admissions news. Thanks for listening.